It's one of history's great ironies, isn't it? That a nation brought to its absolute knees by one war could be so completely and paradoxically saved by another. An economy shattered by total defeat was, against all logic, reborn in the fire of a new conflict it never even fought.
By 1949, this was the grim reality. The threat of total collapse wasn't some distant fear. It was a daily, suffocating presence on the streets of Tokyo, of Osaka, of Hiroshima. The nation was truly balanced on a knife's edge.
Welcome to Insight History HD. Together, we will peel back the layers of narratives long locked away in the archives of history. To really understand the miracle that was about to happen, you first have to grasp the sheer depth of the abyss. Post-war Japan was a landscape of ruin. Its war machine hadn't just stalled, it had completely evaporated. Hyperinflation was out of control, and just finding enough food and basic materials was a part of everyday life.
Now, the American occupation did introduce sweeping democratic reforms, a new pacifist constitution, massive land redistribution, but, these noble ideals couldn't immediately fill empty stomachs or restart silent factories. The economic engine of the entire nation had just seized.
As the 1940s were drawing to a close, the entire world map was being redrawn. The new fault lines of the Cold War triggered a complete 180 in American policy. They went from punishing a former enemy to rebuilding it as a capitalist fortress in Asia. And the instrument of this drastic change was a Detroit banker named Joseph Dodge. His prescription wasn't some gentle remedy, no. This was economic shock therapy, and it was designed to be brutally fast and decisive.
The plan itself was completely uncompromising. It demanded a super-balanced budget, which meant the government was forbidden from spending a single yen more than it collected. It slashed all the state subsidies that had been propping up industry, and it locked in a new fixed exchange rate. It was a total reversal of the state-controlled model that had defined Japan for more than a decade.
And the effect on inflation? It was immediate and, frankly, incredible. As documented in the Phoenix recovery, the national budget flipped from a massive deficit to a surplus almost overnight. Prices, which had been spiraling out of control, finally stabilized. But here's the thing, that cure, it was a kind of poison of its own. In stamping out hyperinflation, the Dodge line plunged the entire nation into a deep, agonizing recession. Businesses failed, unemployment skyrocketed, the fragile recovery looked like it was about to shatter completely. This was rock bottom.
And then, just when things looked their absolute bleakest, an event a world away changed everything. A geopolitical crisis was exploding on the nearby Korean peninsula, a conflict that seemed to have absolutely nothing to do with Japan's internal economic problems.
Suddenly, Japan's geography, which had once been a vulnerability, became its single greatest asset. The islands were the perfect, unsinkable aircraft carrier and supply depot for American military operations in Asia. Just think about that timing for a second. Only 15 months after the Dodge squeeze began to strangle the economy, North Korea invaded the South. Two seemingly disconnected events were on a collision course, and they were about to set off a chain reaction that would reshape the global economy for the next 50 years.
The war in Korea was, of course, a human tragedy. But for Japan's dying economy, it was like, as one person said at the time, blessed rain from heaven. It became the unexpected, the unintentional, and the unbelievably powerful engine of its salvation.
The whole mechanism for this rescue was something called special procurements. As it's recorded in Chapter 2, Fiscal and Monetary Policies as the economy stabilized, the U.S. military, which needed huge amounts of supplies for its war effort, simply turned to the closest industrial base it could find, Japan.
The sheer scale of this cash infusion is just staggering. A report on the Korean War's impact on U.S. business shows these payments jumped from $149 million in 1950 to over $809 million by 1953. To put that in perspective, that was over a quarter of Japan's entire export trade. This wasn't a stimulus, it was a tidal wave of foreign currency flooding the economy. And Japan was uniquely ready for this. Its industrial base, though damaged, was still there, still sophisticated. Its workforce was highly skilled. And so, all of a sudden, dormant factories roared back to life. They were making textiles for uniforms, steel for repairs, trucks from a nearly bankrupt company called Toyota, even tape recorders from a tiny startup called Sony. Companies that were on the verge of collapse were suddenly flooded with more orders than they could handle. The recession didn't just end, it was completely obliterated.
This emergency rescue did so much more than just end a recession. It injected the capital, the technology, and really the sheer confidence that was needed to lay the foundation for what the world would soon come to know as the Japanese economic miracle.
And right at the heart of this new era was an incredibly powerful government agency that was actually established in 1949, the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, or MITI. It would become the grand architect of Japan's industrial renaissance, a role it could only play because of the breathing room that the war boom provided.
See, MITI didn't command industries, it guided them. Through this unique process of administrative guidance, it acted like a conductor for an orchestra. It might, for example, encourage several small steel companies to merge, creating a single, globally competitive giant. And then, it would give that new champion priority access to foreign currency to import the best technology from the West. It was a masterful partnership between the state and private industry.
The entire corporate landscape was transformed. The old, family-controlled conglomerates, the Zaibatsu, had been broken up by the occupation. In their place, new industrial networks called Keiretsu rose up. These weren't family dynasties, but alliances of companies, all centered around a powerful main bank. That bank, often working with MITI, provided the long-term, patient capital that was needed for massive industrial investment.
So let's pull all these threads together. You have an austerity plan that almost destroyed the economy, then a distant war that provides this completely accidental lifeline, and finally a new model of government-industry partnership that harnessed the resulting boom and managed to sustain it for decades.
The conclusion, stated plainly in the analysis Le Plan Marshall et le Relèvement économique de l'Europe, is pretty much inescapable. The foundation of Japan's post-war success wasn't some grand, brilliant master plan. It was a wholly unexpected, almost unbelievable consequence of geopolitical conflict.
It really leaves you with a resonant question, doesn't it? How often are the great transformations of history born not from careful design, but from the unpredictable collision of crisis and chance?
If this journey has offered you a new perspective, support our exploration by subscribing to Inside History HD. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next narrative.